are watching Canadian Muslim news on Muslim Network TV from Toronto, Ontario. I am Catherine Bullock. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. What is the impact of war and occupation on Kashmir's climate? We will talk later in the show with Tazeen Hasan from Justice for All Canada about that. But first, some news headlines. Canada to replace its military aircraft with F-35s. Ottawa considers Indigenous Ombudsperson position. Principal sends ISIS flag image for Islamic History Month. EU grants Bosnia candidate status for membership. And now the details. Anita Anand, Canada's Defence Minister, has announced Monday that Canada will replace the Royal Canadian Air Force's CF-18s with a fleet of F-35s. During a virtual conference, Anand said Canada will purchase the aircraft from the United States. Canada will purchase a total of 88 aircraft for around $19 billion. The first set of 16 aircraft will be delivered to the military in 2026. During the conference, Anand emphasized global security threats faced from China and Russia. She said Canada needs to ensure its military strength by being able to operate with its allies. Ottawa will appoint a ministerial representative to provide recommendations on outlining the role of an Indigenous and human rights ombudsperson. The news comes after Mark Miller, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister, held a press conference last evening. Miller said the former executive director of the National Inquiry into the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, also known as MMIWG, is a good fit for the role. The MMIWG inquiry concluded in 2019. The report made 231 calls for justice. The findings were accepted by Prime Minister Trudeau. His government, however, is criticised for not taking prompt action on further disappearances and murders. Parents at a downtown Toronto elementary school are hoping for answers from a visit to the school by two members of the Toronto District School Board over an incident dating from last year. This comes in the wake of an October email sent to nearly 700 families by the school's principal to mark the beginning of Islamic Heritage Month and Somali Heritage Month. Multiple families were in shock as the email included an image of ISIS's black and white flag. The principal later apologized. According to media reports, many families want more than an apology and are still waiting for an explanation. European Union leaders have granted Bosnia candidate status to join the Union in a recent summit in Brussels, putting the Balkan nation at the start of a long road to membership. The EU's willingness to consider letting in more of its eastern neighbors is to stop the influence of Russia and China in the region. Bosnia now becomes the third country after conflict-ravaged Ukraine and Moldova to be granted candidate status in the past 6 months. The move comes despite long-standing concerns over the political situation in Bosnia. Bosnia remains partitioned between a Serb entity and a Muslim Croat federation connected by a weak central government. And that's it for the news. War, armed conflict, occupation. We often talk about these things and how they impact human beings, but we forget that also has an impact on the environment. Kashmir's environment has been suffering the impact of Indian occupation. To explain, we are joined by Tazeen Hasan, who is the campaign manager of the Kashmir Action for Justice for All Canada. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the show.
Walaikum assalam, Sister Kathy. Thank you for inviting me to the show.
It's our pleasure to have you with us again. You are one of the regulars on our show, always updating us on what's going on to do with Kashmir and the Kashmir Action campaign that you run. I understand that you're just back from a conference in Pakistan where you were talking about climate change and water pollution. Tell us why you attended the conference and what's like one key lesson you learned while you were there.
Well, I was in Pakistan. I was invited by Kashmir Forum. And basically, I was actually working on this campaign. I mean, on this topic before, because, environment is a transnational issue.
Mm.
So Kashmir's atmosphere, Kashmir is a Himalayan valley. We know it's the highest conflict zone in the world, and it's embedded between three nuclear powers: China, uh, Pakistan and India. So basically, when there are about 600,000 to 900,000 Indian soldiers and paramilitary troops stationed in Kashmir, in Indian administered Kashmir.
Mm.
So their presence since about more than 30 years now, it's damaging Kashmir's environment very badly.
Mm.
Kashmir's glaciers are melting at an alarming rate right now, and there are various reasons for that. You know that when soldiers are stationed at some place, and this huge number of soldiers, they need natural resources. Their stationing causes environmental damage to the natural resources, natural environment. And then there are some bad practices that are being employed by the Indian Army.
So let me just pause you for a moment. I do want to talk about those bad practices, but let's just try to dwell a little bit more on this, explaining. I hadn't even thought about the impact on the environment of occupation until you mentioned it to us. So let's just understand this a little bit more. And you were at the conference, and it was an invitation from a group. I think you said Kashmir Forum.
So actually, I talked to them while I was in Pakistan, and they knew that I'm working on this topic, and I wanted to discuss that topic with them, especially the environmentalists who are working, who had worked in Indian occupied Kashmir. And then when I came back to Canada, they invited me to this climate change conference, and they wanted me to explain what are the effects on, why it is important to talk about Kashmir environment for an advocacy organization.
Okay, so why is it important to talk about it for an advocacy? You're a human rights, you're not an environmental scientist. Can you just give us that key message, that pitch in like one or two sentences?
Yeah, basically we know that there is a genocide going on in Kashmir, and this is called intentional damage to the environment. It's called environmental genocide. I would call it environmental genocide. And environmental genocide is also taking place in Kashmir.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the glaciers. Kashmir, I understand, is called the third pole, or Asia's water tower. And it has, just check my figures, 120 to 150 glaciers. The largest one being the Kolahoi Glacier, which has lost 23% of its area since 1962.
Exactly.
So climate change is obviously something that's been going on, human impact pollution, for a very long time. 1962 is like over 50 years or something. Can you tell us how the occupation impacts the glacier as distinct from just general human activity?
As I mentioned earlier, there are about around 1 million Indian soldiers and paramilitary troops and contractors are stationed in Kashmir. So their presence in Kashmir, you know that army needs a huge resources. When this massive army is stationed somewhere, deployed somewhere, they need huge resources. So definitely they actually practice deforestation. They need barracks. They need natural resources like water. And then there are some, and their vehicles, they emit carbon used for transportation of the armed forces and their supplies and every other thing. And then the ammunition they use, conventional or non-conventional. And then we know that there are certain bad practices they are employing for counterinsurgency. They burn houses, they burn shops, sometimes they burn entire villages. So definitely these practices. And then Indian Army has been involved in smuggling of timber, exporting timber outside Kashmir. So you know, Kashmir Valley, it used to be a very green valley because of these glaciers. There were 200 glaciers actually. 10 years back, 20 years back, there used to be 200 glaciers. Now there are about 150 glaciers because 50 glaciers vanished. And then the Kalahari Glacier, it used to be in 1980s, it used to be about 11 square kilometers. In 2009, 2010, it reduced to 2.63 square kilometer. So you can imagine glaciers are vanishing from Kashmir Valley, and they are not only providing water to Kashmir Valley, but they are also providing water to Pakistan. Pakistan is also suffering from this environmental genocide.
Right. So there's so much in what you said. I hope we have a chance to tease out a few things. Let's just talk about deforestation. So that means deforestation means cutting down trees. And you mentioned two things, I think, to build their own houses, but also smuggling timber out for an industry, I guess, in India, supplying India with houses. Is there nothing going on to prevent this? People should understand about deforestation by now.
Definitely, people of Kashmir, they have no agency, if you know. Journalists, human rights defenders, activists, entire political leadership is detained, either house arrest or detained, or journalists are either silenced or they have been barred from speaking. So they have no agency to talk about themselves. So there are environmentalists who have been raising voice. There are some. There is one major practice that is going on there, despite warnings from environmentalists. There is a pilgrimage that is called Amarnath pilgrimage. And a few years back, since ancient times, actually, a few hundred to 1,000 pilgrims were used to go visit this Amarnath pilgrimage site in Kashmir. But recently, these Hindutva forces, since about 2 decades, Hindutva forces, RSS-led neo-fascist, neo-Nazi Hindutva forces, they actually encouraged the entire India to come to visit these sites. And about 1 million pilgrims are visiting this site. And environmentalists have, 20 years back, environmentalists warned that if the Indian government did not regulate the number of pilgrims in the season, Kashmir's glaciers are in danger. And they are already melting very fast. But Indian government is not ready to regulate, restrict the number of pilgrims, although they have done it in Uttarakhand province. There are pilgrimage sites in other Indian provinces, and Indian government is managing that to protect the environment in other provinces. But in Kashmir, they are not doing that. Number one reason is their settler colonial attitude towards the Kashmiris. So this is the environmental genocide. I will call it environmental genocide, that they are snatching, they are depriving Kashmiris of their natural resources, water that is crucial for the existence of life in Kashmir. It is crucial for the existence of life in Pakistan. You know, Pakistan is
not only for human beings, but I understand that there's a lot of animal species that are unique to the region that are also in danger of extinction, like bears and marmots and a particular bird species. You haven't mentioned that yet, but I assume that's part of what you mean when you talk about environmental genocide.
Exactly. The entire ecosystem is in danger.
Well, we're out of time. I wish I had a chance to ask you more about what people are doing about it, but we've reached our limit. So thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing with us. And we hope that humanity can come to their senses and reverse this.
Thank you very much, Sister Kathy, for giving me a chance to speak about this environmental genocide. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you like what we do, please share, like, and subscribe. Stay safe and God bless.